Welcome back to the Alight podcast, formerly Humans and Earth. I am thrilled to be talking today with Anne and David Darling, the farmers at the farm at Catawissa Creek in Catawissa, Pennsylvania. And I imagine you'll want to see their website. I will link it in the show notes. We are going to be focusing on the serendipitous adventures that can open up when you are following your guidance and open to collaborating with spirit and nature. So, welcome, Anne and David.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thank you. We're so excited to share this conversation with you.
So, you two have recently put, I think, on your YouTube channel, a wonderful conversation with Sandra Walter that led off with David's kind of amazing story of how you came to this farm. And we're going to talk about that as well. But hearing David's story and part of Anne's made me curious about leading off with Anne's story today. I know, Anne, that you were educated and working in the fashion industry and simultaneously on a spiritual path and feeling some discontent and looking for some deeper fulfillment. That's most of what I know. So tell us about your pathway that brought you to this surprising and beautiful place of the farm at Catawissa Creek.
Yeah, that's definitely the part right before I came here. But my fashion journey started, I think, when I was very, very, very young. I started taking scarves out and sewing them together with play needles and yarn. But I guess I started noticing like, oh, I think I can do things. Like, I think I know things. When I was probably 12, my grandma gave me her sewing machine. That was her grandma or her mother's sewing machine. And she just showed me how to sew forward and backward. That was it. And somehow I just started making clothes. And I'm talking like complicated things too. Like I would look at jackets. I wouldn't cut them apart. I would just cut pieces of fabric to look like those pieces and then make a jacket. So I was creating. And then when I got to high school, a teacher noticed that I was wearing clothes that I made and that I didn't really know the formal way of how to sew. So she kind of she mentored me and taught me the formal sewing techniques, how to read patterns, how to drape. And she kind of fostered my creativity through the process. So instead of like I think she had one class project she gave me, and then she said to me, like, do whatever you want. I'll just show you how to do it. So she pushed me to go to the Fashion Institute of Technology, which is like a prestigious New York school. And I got in and I spent about a year in New York City, but for I'm sure the people listening to can understand as like a sensitive person being in New York City had challenges and like I needed something a little different. So I saw they had a study abroad program, and I left New York City and went to Italy. And luckily, this program, those schools are like sister schools, so you can do your entire degree abroad if you want, which is a very nice option. So that's when I started my journey in Italy. 1 year in Florence and 2 years in Milan. And what was interesting about being there was the world of fashion there is so craftsman oriented. So I was working with people that were such artisans at their techniques that it inspired me to take a path that was different than what I thought. When I got there, I thought I was going to do women's sportswear, which is kind of like everyday wear, but it can go from like formal, informal, doesn't matter. However, when I met some of these artisans that were making knitwear, my whole perspective changed. And this is where I started seeing that, like, I think knitwear might be the future of fashion because of how you can create an entire garment from one yarn. and it minimizes waste. Um, and you can create unlimited shapes, unlimited stitches, so things can look completely different, unlimited gauges. It's not just like a sweater or a t-shirt. So that's where I started getting into knitwear. And this will segue back into our farm because this is the initiation of our sheep project, but many, many, many years before. So let's say I finished college and I come back to the United States and I wanted to do something different. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be in the fashion world. And this is where I started like going off into the yoga world. I started trying a little bit of marketing things. I became a yoga teacher. I even like I had my own yoga line of clothes that I was working on. Um, and I was trying to open a healing center and do Thai body work. So this is where more little things that we're trying to pull in together here at the farm is this is the beginning stages. Um, but I'm sure as many like mid-20s people know, you want to move out of your parents' house and meet someone. So I wound up going back into the fashion world, into the corporate fashion world. Um, and the serendipities are really starting to pick up. Like, as I told you, I was not really comfortable in New York City, and that was where the majority of the fashion work was. So I was praying, I was meditating, and I'm like, God, I know you're going to put me in the perfect possible place, working with the perfect possible people. And it's funny because I had this idea in my head of New York City, like Midtown Manhattan. It's hustle and bustle, it's Times Square, it's kind of stinky, it's kind of dirty. And I did an interview in Midtown, but that office was being moved downtown the week that I started. So I actually never had to work in Midtown. I was put in the perfect place, right at World Trade Center area, Brookfield Place on the water, where Battery Park is right there. There's trees, I saw butterflies, there was the water there. There was this nature that kind of kept me grounded, even though I was in New York City. So even though I started my career a little bit later, I moved up pretty quickly to the point where I was at a level that I could live on my own, had my car, I could go hiking every weekend. I wanted to be in nature with the mountains. They were always calling me. However, while I was at this level, I realized like this commute was insane. And I was meditating every single day because this commute I talked about in the Sandra chat as well. It was like 2 hours each way, and I had no life
2 hours each way
each way. And
because you were living in New Jersey.
yeah, I was living in New Jersey, and I'm in downtown Manhattan, so it's not like I take the bus to Midtown and I'm at work. It's like I get to Midtown and then I have to take a 45-minute subway downtown. So, yes, it was challenging. So the job, I worked with amazing people. I watched that team be crafted into like the most beautiful group of people ever. I was very, very blessed. Um, but there was this disconnect where like I created kind of the life that I wanted in like a place that I could be in nature, but then how could I wanted a family, like how could I meet someone if I don't have time to go out and date? Like leave the house at 6 a.m., get home at like 8 or later. So I was using the time during my commute to read, to meditate, to center, and I always knew that like purpose was really, really, really important to me. So I'm always like in my meditations, highest possible good, highest love, highest light. And I would even send that light out into the subways, into all of New York City from my heart space because I look around at the people and like I might be awake and looking like feeling this light, but I could see the stress and the like just heaviness on top of others. So, I would just send blessings everywhere. So then it got to the point where it was like the Thursday before everything shut down when COVID happened. And I'm getting off this tiny bus on the George Washington Bridge. And I just look up at the sky. It's like cotton candy, pink and blue. And I say to God, like, I can't do this another day. I don't know how, but figure it out because I can't do it. And thankfully, I had already taken off that Friday, but by Sunday, everything was shut down, completely shut down. And it's funny, I like say it like this, I never had to go back ever. They furloughed, well, I was working from home for a little bit and then they furloughed everyone and then they laid everyone off, which it's fine. God had other plans. It's all serendipitous, right? Um, so I'm at home in my apartment alone and I'm still thinking like, oh man, I like really want to meet someone and I want to have a family in my life. And now COVID is going on. How many years is this gonna take? Like, am I gonna be mid-30s by the time I have kids? All of these things, the spirals of whatever. Um, and these are the funny things that like when we come up with these timelines that are just nonsense, God laughs, right? Because the bigger picture is always there and the highest good is always there. And as long as we align our hearts, it's amazing what opens up. So I'm alone, feeling a little hopeless, meditating, and I called my best friend and she's like, just go on a dating app. Like just go on there. Just try one more time. And it's funny, she's kind of psychic too. So she's psychic. So she has a little vision of what's to come. Can't tell me, of course, but that's okay, that's how it is. It's the excitement of life. Um, and I had done a couple online dates and before COVID, and I always found it like very um what's the word?
You said exhausting.
Yeah, I found it very exhausting because like I'm sensitive to energy. So, I can meet these guys that are very handsome, very established in their career. We have similar interests. They're good people. But as soon as I see them in person, I'm in their energy field, that sinking gut feeling comes in of like, ooh, you're not it. You're not it. I'm sorry. You're wonderful, but you're not it. So after doing that a couple times, I just was like, I'm not gonna meddle at all. And it's funny how things shut down, and my best friend is like, you gotta just try, get online. So I kind of tell myself that I never have to meet anyone because we're all at home. It's good practice to just talk to people. I'm going to be as authentic as I possibly can on that profile. Everything about me that's special to me, things that I love to do. Like, I don't have to be anything other than the most authentic me. And within a week, I meet David Darling. And that is where our story
Yeah, it
begins
begins.
because he asked me things that were very unusual that like for example, this is kind of a funny story about it. I was living in on the Fort Lee Edgewater area, which is known as like the Gold Coast of New Jersey, but no one knows this, even though these apps are saying you live on the Gold Coast. So he thinks I'm in Australia.
Well, like none of her pictures were in the United States. Maybe besides like one or two, and I'm like, this is weird, like how did we even match? She left out a few key details of like being very open. She wrote her whole thing of like who she is and like what she wants her like perfect day and perfect like life to look like. which I thought was very, very good. But the one thing is she opened her radius on the
Oh
app
yeah.
to like
Unlimited, I
unlimited.
think.
And I think mine was already like that because when you live in the middle of like nowhere, you're kind of like, well, you gotta have a big distance. And before you were just like looking in
Yeah, you're right.
like
Like New
that
York City.
small few mile radius, which there's a lot of people in there, but some intuitive thing. And I think like Anne's left out of some very interesting stories, which I maybe I'll say because she's a very good manifester, and I don't think she realizes it, but moving into this apartment, she didn't have enough money, like wasn't making enough money, but she like signed it anyway. And then
Amazing.
got a raise like the next day.
Yes, I
That would
promoted
take
very
care,
shortly
yeah, like
after.
promoted and got a raise like immediately. And um the other one, about this, she had like this manifestation list of like who she wanted in a partner and all this stuff. And it's like very eerie, like what's on that list. And I'm like kind of the opposite, but it's like really funny. She was saying like the same words that I was saying in the Sandra talk about like meeting Alfred in the farm. I'm like, well, like I guess I'll just get experience and like learn how to, visit properties. It's like kind of it's like the same exact thing, and it's like all of a sudden it's just like one. But yeah, she didn't have any pictures from the US, or like one that was like kind of like a selfie, like she was like really like kind of like businessy dressed up, like not really like how I like normally see her like at all. And she still looked very nice, but I was like, man, why did I swipe this person? If the I'm like, where do you live? I'm like, Australia's cool. Like, I don't know. That was basically but the one connection we had was Sweden. She had a picture
Oh,
in
yes.
Sweden, and I was like, "Oh, I've been there." But she's so detail oriented too, and and this is why I also very much picked up on it. Her profile is completely filled out, which is hilarious because mine was not. I had like pictures and like a few words like that were apparently very impactful, but like I had just made this thing, and apparently you did too, but I was just kind of like, how does it work? Like and but even more detailed than what was on she wrote, there was I had never seen this on anyone else's, but there was a way to like
Geotag.
caption or write a little comment on the picture. So she like had that. So it immediately made me like, what are these like things on the picture? And like, it had like, oh, Sweden or Stockholm or something like that. And I like could write a comment on that part of it or something like that. And yeah, and that's kind of how I like, got lucky and drawn in, because it's like it was not clear like where she lived or like anything. Uh, and yeah, and then I think one of the, kind of things I was asking her if, like, I asked in a way, like a very insightful way of like, do you like living in New York City? Because I don't see any pictures of you. I would have no idea you lived there or like around there.
It was a
And
great
it kind of
conversation
led into a
starter.
big dialogue. And
Yeah.
yeah, then she asked me to video chat, and I was like, oh, I didn't know you could do that.
But
Like,
I will say too that the about his profile, the one thing that was on there was he said he didn't put that
I
much.
had two things.
He answered a question that was, what was the craziest thing he'd ever done? And he said, starting my own farm. And I thought that was the most ambitious thing I had ever heard. I thought it was the coolest thing
It was
I'd ever heard.
that sentence.
I was like, this is the kind of self-starter, believes in himself, believes in what he's doing kind of person that I want to talk to. And I want to talk about too that when we did go on a date in person, because if anyone else on the spiritual path is looking for a partner, I think that some of these things might actually assist or
Yeah.
just like give ideas of like, oh wow, she felt this, or I feel that when I meet people and they aren't the right person. But a lot of people say when you know,
Oh yeah.
but they don't expand on like what that experience might have been for them. And this one was like very vivid because I had such a contrast of like meeting people that weren't right, even though they were great. It was that when we met in person, I felt this overwhelming peace in my heart, like just total, like huge exhale, and just this little whisper inside of myself saying, like, I could see this. And that was it. That was like the knowing for me was this peace and this like, wow, I could see this. And it was so subtle. It wasn't like a brick hitting me or anything like that. It was just this peace. And it was so beautiful.
It's because I brought my puppy on the
Oh,
hike.
yeah. I mean, for me, that would make a big difference too.
I had to.
You had to,
I
right?
like some, but it's like really funny because the eerie list of like perfect manifestation, she's like, I want a big white fluffy dog. And I'm
Who's friendly too.
like a big white fluffy dog, which is like, okay, like how many big white fluffy dogs are there, you know? Like I don't think I'd ever seen one, but I was working at in the winter, like
Like 6 months, no, 5 months before we met. This is what happened.
yeah, like I we would get products from this other farm like that everyone was like, oh, they're like a super good farm. They did like dairy, or they've been organic dairies since 1989, 100% grass fed. Um, and that's really hard to do as a dairy and like through the winter and all that stuff. And everyone's like, no, they're the best like land managers, like farm, like in Pennsylvania. And I was like, wow, like maybe I can check it out and like see it, you know, and I like ask them like, can I come work in the winter? Like, even if it's just like 1 or 2 days. So it's like, of course, I'm like working on like Sunday mornings. I have to like in the winter be there at like I have to wake up at like 3 a.m. and like drive to milk cows, you know, in 1 degree weather or whatever it was. But it was like so it was like one of those things where it's like it didn't matter because and you're like getting poop, there's like poop coming and like you're like, whoa, get out of here. Spray it with like a fire hose. It's like really funny. Oh, it's raw milk too. So I got to like really see like what a like super clean, like super like
Sustainable.
sustainable operation was and like also like whoa, like that's what it takes to have like a good dairy, you know. So anyway, but
Yes.
all of a sudden I go in there one morning and it's like I hear like it sounds like chickens or something, you know, like little peeps and I'm
Like
like you know, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And I like go into the barn and it's like all these like Great Pyrenees puppies. And I had met the mom like a while before, like when I first started there, because we would go do the chickens like after, and she's guarding the chickens. And she, you know, I'd never seen a dog like this. Like they're huge. Like you know, people say, "Oh, my dog's 100 pounds," but like this dog's bigger than Anne. Like, you know, if he stands up and you know, his mom just does that and like puts her paws on my shoulders and like looks me in the face like very and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never seen this. And I was like, oh wow, I wonder if I could have, yeah, I was like, oh, that's such a cool dog, and I didn't know that. And then, yeah, like a few months later, I hear these puppies, and I'm like, oh my God, like, and
Gotta get
it's like
one.
such an irresponsible thing, for me. I like don't have my own, like, it's so transitory and like, but I'm just like, can I have one of these? Like, like trade work for it or something. And he said, yeah. And so that was another like, manifesting
He had the
moment.
big white fluffy
Like
dog.
I
But before he was big, he was
it's
he was
yeah.
only 40 pounds at that point.
And it's really funny because the reciprocal happened. Someone else asked me like, "Oh, what kind of dog would you get?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I guess like a German Shepherd or something." And then Anne found the German Shepherd
This is like 2 years
like
ago on
when
a rescue that
yeah.
was basically giving dogs away because
So
he needed to die.
now we both have our dogs, but we found them for each other.
Oh, I love that. I don't think
That's
we've talked about dogs, but I am a total
Dog.
dog devotee. And my dog
Yeah.
who's no longer here in the physical has been featured on this podcast in at
Oh
least one
my gosh,
episode.
yeah.
Okay, so I love
we
these
met.
stories, and thank you so much for giving us the overview of what brought you into 2020 and meeting David.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. So, David, tell us kind of highlights
Yeah.
of your
First.
pathway up until this point in 2020. And I think by 2020, you already had the farm, but track
Well,
us
yeah, I mean,
back.
this is the other funny thing of like just starting there. It's like the first date, we did that hike, and then the second date, we're like, I like we really didn't want to leave after that, and I was just like, oh man, this is like such a bummer, you know. And she felt the same way too. And we're trying to plan the next thing, and I'm like, I really got to go to the farm, and I haven't like bought it yet, but it's like getting close. I think he had like just asked me like, can you buy this? And we'll do the highlights of like why that's crazy. Um, and I just said yeah, and the short story is there's no price discussed for this whole time. And basically it was like, with this person, you're like, and I'm like, okay, here's like the big thing of like she wants to go on a hike because it was really fun. And I'm like, I've got to go and like clean up this place that hasn't been lived in for 20 years and hasn't been farmed in for 60 plus years, maybe. Nobody really knows the last date of that, but uh yeah, it's like really funny like looking back on it. I had no issues like being like, hey, come with a strange man into this like middle of nowhere broke down farm. It's the woods are all around, and like I'm like it's like camping. And thinking back, I'm like, wow, like that's kind of it wasn't weird to me at all like saying this like in the moment, and you just like packed your car up and like came, and it was like fine. Like we just started cleaning everything up and like building everything. And we kind of signed like a little tiny lease. Like the guy is an amazing person,
That we bought it
Alfred, that
from.
and just like we basically just moved in here, kind of. Like I was still working at the other farm, and like, but we would just come here and just build stuff and like clean up the house. And we had got it really clean, amazingly, because it was full of like, I mean, 100 years of stuff, generations of stuff that, and you go through the depression and all the world wars and stuff. They just kept everything. And so that was also part of the deal, is like, you take everything, that's left. And so we had got it clean, and then we inherited like another Anne's grandmother's stuff, came and filled the house again. And like so it like we're like just getting it like kind of back to our stuff now, like what we want after 5 years. But we've done a pretty good job because every single building was full of stuff. And it's like most people have like one building to take care of, and we have like a barn bigger than three houses, and but anyway, the highlights of the story is I grew up in San Diego, got recruited to play lacrosse near you actually at Eastern University. It was kind of one of these things. It was like the worst school for lacrosse on my like recruitment agenda, but for some reason the coach was just like very compelling figure to like go there, and like all these other people that I had met on the recruiting visits were like really good too, and we are like, why are we getting recruited here? And for some reason we all like decided to go there, and it was a very like it was like building something, and I think that's very important to like both of us, of like you're building a new team, you're not going to like a legacy thing. It was like proving it, and we did pretty good job of doing that. But I studied mathematics, but Eastern is like it is a Christian university, and that wasn't really a part of my path. I had like seen things like prior, like seeing people die like in high school and stuff, like very traumatically. And I think like I didn't know that, um, but I was like, God doesn't exist, kind of, but somehow ending up like feeling that pull and call to like be in this like environment that made it accessible in many different ways. And it's like really funny. They had like this, I would spend a lot of time in the library, and there was like a section of like different spiritual stuff, and like that's where I would be like all the time, and finding these like things that really helped me, like these books that we still use today. um and then that ended, and I'm kind of like lost and looking for purpose, still not realizing kind of like why, like all that, like my spiritual like path, because it was so blocked with, how could bad things happen, like basically. And but I moved into like food and homeless services because it just like something was very drawing to that, of like how do you help these people that just can't have the most basic things. And then when you're doing that, you're like, where does food come from? And like, why are we giving these people terrible food? And so I started just somehow meeting that there was like some really cool farms, young farmers in Philadelphia, in and around Philadelphia, that I was starting to like kind of network with. And I had been doing some like composting things. We don't have to like really go into it, but that was kind of like the start of, this of like, and then I really saw like a need to produce the food. And I don't think I like made that connection of like I'm going to be a farmer or whatever. But people, the serendipity starts happening when people are like, okay, you need to go to this conference. And I have like no money, and you're serving the homeless and trying to like convince people like food waste is not trash, and it's actually like valuable, but it's a very hard sell, um, especially like in certain places, like like. So we had a lot of education to do if we were going to do that. And I actually think Philly is like really, after I kind of left, like I heard that there was like a great education initiative about food waste and composting that was happening.
Yeah,
And
I think that's true. I think composting is
it like
starting to take off in
yeah,
Philadelphia and in the suburbs. Like
it
I
was like
have neighbors who have a composting service that comes, and then the town next to me has municipal composting. So there's a lot
so
developing.
I'm like so glad to see that, but it's like I like kind of was like at the knife's edge apparently, and I was like, oh man, like we have a long way to go. And luckily, like people knew I was doing that and were like, no, you should go to this farming conference. It's like, because they knew I was like connected to it. And at the same time, I was doing like, I had like randomly signed up to be a co-leader for the Young Farmers Coalition. And I'm like, I'm not a farmer, but I'll like help out organize, like you guys are doing hard work and I'm can do stuff, and luckily all of that serendipitously led to free conference, free meals, all these things. And the important part of the story is, I'm like on a phone call just like this, and they're like, oh, we'll pay for all your stuff, pay for your conference and your meals and just work the table. In that call, my phone immediately rings and they're like, hey, are you going to the conference? And I'm like, yeah, now I am. And they're like, do you need a ride and a place to stay? And I'm like, yeah, I really do. And it was really like that of ending this, like, whatever we were using at that time, Zoom, I don't even think existed, but
Skype.
yeah, some sort of
Yeah.
their thing that businesses were using, and ended that. I was getting up out of the chair and the phone started ringing and I was like, okay, I'll like answer it. And that question was posed. They're like, hey, are you going? Like, and luckily the Eagles won the Super Bowl that year. And it's like a huge part of it's kind of like it's like, it's so weird because it was the first time they had like ever won and it was such a big event. And like, and now they're pretty good every year. And, but like, these people were like, and the conference was lining up like right after the parade. And the people were big fans and they were like, we'll just come down for the parade and like pick you up and like we'll go. And, but then like at the conference, like two really important things happened. I'm like at the table, no one else is in the room. And, um, this old guy comes and the whole theme of the conference is farming for the future. What are we going to do about all the old people that have all the land that have no one to pass it on to because young people don't want to go to farm because it's super hard and doesn't make any money? And I'm like invigorated. I'm like, this is where we have to be. Like, I'm like, I don't care how hard it is. Like like we need to preserve the land and all this stuff. And this guy walks up and nobody else is in the hallways. Like everyone's in conferences. I don't know why I signed up for this particular time frame. I don't think I knew what I was doing, which was probably good. Um, and he just starts spewing this like pitch of like, I have 131 acres, like it's near this, it was an apple orchard, blah 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 blah. Like I'm looking, for someone, and I'm just like, whoa, okay, like I'll take your email down, like uh and it made me really kind of sad, but also like invigorated of like, hey, that's exactly what they're talking about. Like these like old guys like have this land and they're just like giving it away, and and but I like on the way
Yeah,
home.
at that point, what you were getting into.
Yeah, I'm on the way home. I'm like, oh man. Oh, the other important thing was one of the guys introducing the keynote speaker like raised his like sweater and like had like a Philadelphia Eagles like Christmas sweater on and was like, "Go Birds," like because they had just won. And I was like, "Oh, that's weird," because this was in State College. And I'm like,
Steelers territory.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, and also like you don't like I didn't really know farms and like I guess like sustainable farms near Philly that would work for me, right? And I like saw him too at like and I was like, oh, I want to talk to him. And I didn't. Like I had a chance, like we were just like so close and like I just didn't do it. And then the next serendipity was like I just got home and I'm like, I'm gonna just sign up for an apprenticeship. And like the first one I see was like posted like a few minutes ago. I don't even know what weird website I was on. And like I couldn't even tell you the name, but it's like it was posted by by these guys, the very 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 good farm. That's literally their last name and the name of the farm, the Good Farm. And it's one of the longest running CSAs in Pennsylvania, and they've been certified organic for a long time. They were the farmers at Rodale for a long time. um and so they're like super great. And so I got like really, put my application in. I was like so nervous too, because it was like a very thorough application, probably to weed people out. Um and I'm like, I almost didn't do it. I'm like they're not gonna want me, and then like the next Friday I'm like up there, and like they're like, you can do it. And I'm like, great. I How am I gonna like live here? Like, so like it all like worked out, but I moved like 6 times that first year just to be able to stay in the area. And like so like I mean, yeah, I went through like a crazy time of that first 2 years to like really like, are you gonna stick with this or not? And
So this is when you're apprenticing in
I'm
farming, in vegetable
apprenticing.
farming.
And then the second year of going to that conference, because I had like also signed up for, all these serendipitous things, like those mentors were working with the people that run the conference to develop the first formalized vegetable apprenticeship that's state recognized in the United States. So there's like a dairy grazing apprenticeship that they modeled this off of, that's like out of, oh my gosh, Wisconsin, I think. That's also state like recognized by the State Department of Labor. So, it's like everyone kind of runs these informal apprenticeships that really kind of screw the kids or the younger people, basically extorting them. They're like, so it's like all these requirements by both the people, the farm owners and the workers, the apprentices, to achieve certain things and to provide fair pay and like this and that. Well, fair pay, whatever that means. What what they established as fair pay. Um, and yeah, so very lucked out, again, that was being developed and finished right at the end of my first season, so I could be the first person in it. And like that gave me like a huge boost of confidence. And they paid for the conference again, because you had to do like credit hours and this and that at the workshops, and food safety and OSHA and all of these things that were really like boost your resume for like getting loans from the FSA and all that stuff. And yeah, so I meet basically fast forward last day of the conference. We're in the last workshop. I'm with a friend. He wants to leave midway through it because it just wasn't really speaking to us. And I'm like, okay, like I'll just follow you. He goes into the other room, sits right next to the same guy, Alfred, from the previous year. And he turns to us during the break to like, they're like, discuss this thing that, and we weren't discussing it. He just starts spewing the whole pitch again. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's near Bloomsburg. It was an apple orchard. You're from Massachusetts. Can I talk to you after? And I kind of like flipped the table, because now he was like, what? I told you about this? Like, and I'm like, and then 2 weeks later, I was here the first time, and we toured the whole property. And it was coming down the hill that I'm looking at right now. And, we had hiked 130 acres and walked the whole boundaries, and he's a very thorough guy too. And, um, I'm like, okay, let's rip the band-aid off here a little bit. Like, what do you want? In my mind, I'm like, what do you want for this? And he like turns around because I'm like, oh my God, it's like so beautiful too. It's like looking out. We were at the peak basically, look coming down the hill and like looking out of over the like fields and up the other big mountain and like seeing the creek and like, it's not like a small creek, it's a huge tributary of the Susquehanna. And I'm just like, how does this place exist? Like it's so beautiful. It's like hadn't been developed, like it's been preserved, like why like these forested areas like are not pristine with they have invasives and stuff, but like humans haven't put their paws there, in a whole human lifetime, basically, which I think is a rare thing for a lot of for a lot of areas. And he turns around and he's basically like nothing, and I'm like, I really believed him. It's like one of those like heart connection things, and we're really in sync. And I think the whole idea in my mind of like new earth and like the new earth creations and new earth relationships are not really centered on money exchange. They don't have to be, because like for him, the preservation of the family farm and the commitment to organic like practices was the value that he was looking for. And that was like what I could offer. I had been getting organic trained. I was very committed, and to go back to like, the compost thing of like I need to be a producer, because like why are we dealing with the trash when we could be dealing with the first step, of like being sustainable on the first step, and don't grow so much and don't just grow what you need and like treat the soil well, all this stuff. And so I was kind of like militant about it too, not in like a bad way, I don't think, but
Committed.
yeah, like very like it was my value exchange. Like that's like I was like super committed to this, and he was too, because like he had his own experiences where he he didn't talk so much about his he talked a lot about his grandfather and the way his grandfather farmed, and that was important to him. And obviously he was at the sustainable agriculture conference, so it's like I don't really
Yeah.
know the history of like after his grandfather, but it probably was a similar story of uh, industrial growth and this and that. And it was a family farm still, so they held on to it through all that development. But I'm sure they still had there was like a sprayer here, or whatever, like
Right.
for the apple trees, but none of the apple trees are still here. And
Okay.
this and that, and it's like nothing had been happening for 60 or 70 years. So it's like I think he's kind of referencing like like the in between of like when he was at college and this and that. And so it's amazing, most organic practices, you have to have 3 years of rest of the soil, and you're surrounded by other farms that are drift and spray and this and that. And this got 70 years of just like recovery. And because after 3 years the soil starts to change, and that's kind of why it's a 3-year window or a 3-year transition period for organic. And that's when
Yeah.
you start to see the benefits and see the changes in the healing process. And so I mean we were like so far ahead of the game. And beautiful. But yeah, and then basically Anne came about like I don't know, a year after a year, the next year, because I had been going basically every 2 weeks to come here and like stay in the loop and like be like, no, I'm committed. Like, I don't know how it's gonna work. Like, we're trying to figure this out. And, because he didn't really know, like, he, he was doing as much as he could, but he basically was like adopting his 5-year-old granddaughter and couldn't like it had to happen, and
Yeah,
like once again,
transition.
like it's just so serendipitous. And basically fast forward, so it's like COVID, it's like we're like, are banks gonna exist anymore? Like what we didn't, no one knew what was gonna happen really. And we're just like, can you just buy it? And I'm like, yeah. And I really believe like there's all these checkpoints on your path where you can go in or out. And there was so many of them because I had like I had making $11 an hour is not a lot of money. And but I'm like doing this like super purposeful thing. So, but I'm also just like using a skill set that I had. Like I was really good at lacrosse, and in that area, it was like really growing, like Allentown area. And I'm sure it's like much bigger now than it was, even when I was there, but there was like opportunity. And I like was coaching after working, and I was doing these private lessons, and like I had volunteered, and like all of a sudden I have like all these clients and they're like, can you teach? Can you run the private teams and all this stuff so our kids can play in the summer? And like I don't know if anyone knows, like those kind of things like make a lot of money. Like kids are paying thousands of dollars per person to be on these club teams. And like there was like a tiny part in my mind because I'm like seeing a paycheck for like $11 an hour, and I'm like I remember the conversation. I was like, no, I'm like going to the farm. And it still wasn't like materialized at all for this like farm thing. And like I could have like been in or out, like with this like clear path, of like just making like a pretty good money, building something I was into, like um but no Anne probably, at that point. And like no, like I don't even want to go down that route, like
It's
but
just
it was
choice
just
points.
it's just choice points. And the same thing, can you just buy it? Yeah.
Choice point.
like well, how much? Like I'm just like how much? And there still really wasn't a price, because the caveat was his brother was like he had 1/6 of the property. um and like the awkward tension of the whole thing was like, I think Alfred really wanted Charlie to be on the same page, like, and they were just in different positions. And like it just, that's why there was no like discussion of like how much is it worth. So we ended up just like dealing with Charlie basically on the price point. But like fast forward, like I had said yeah to this, and then Anne is like here, like where everything is converging like right at this moment. And we just like knew. And it's like one of these things, like people are, you'd be crazy to just buy something. Like we weren't even married really, like were we? I don't
We
know.
we got before we bought it.
Yeah, but
We were basically
not
like,
that much before.
it was, no, we were basically like engaged the first
Well,
date.
that was the whole thing. It's like I knew, like she knew and I knew, and it's one of those things where it's like I don't think you can tell anyone this stuff unless you have that experience.
Yeah.
What's really weird for all these serendipitous people, it's like my parents met on the same weekend, like 28, like it was the same thing. like 28 years like before we did, it was the a weekend before Memorial weekend was their first date, and then Memorial Day weekend they spent all Memorial Day weekend together, and that was the same exact pattern that happened for us.
Yeah.
Like it's so weird, and then we just
It
never
goes
left.
it goes deeper. The serendipities go deeper. Like if you want to go numerology wise too, like if you add up my birthday numbers, I'm a 6. If you add up his birthday numbers, he's a 10.
Yeah, 10. Yeah.
And so like together we're a 16,
7.
7. And like the day that we
got
went on,
married.
the
Oh
day we got
yeah.
married
The
is a
day we went on a
16,
date.
7 day. The day we went on a date is a 16, 7 day. It's
It's
like
really it was
it's very bizarre how
in
deep
sync.
and
Yeah,
in
it
sync the
was.
serendipities go
But
with
like
like
we didn't like know that until
no,
we like looked back and we were just playing around and we were like, okay,
this
this
is
is like kind of
wild. So many
there's
Well, and
there's
I've
something
seen the two of you together. We were at Sandra Walter's conference in Sedona a few weeks ago, and I completely saw the really profound harmony and unity between the two of you in your interactions and your energies, and it is really amazing.
well, we
Thank you.
appreciate that. I mean, yeah, we've spent every day together since
Yeah.
August of
2020
2020.
every day. But we were I mean it was every weekend before that, but
yeah,
yeah.
it
Yeah.
was not much because there was, some turmoil or whatever in COVID, obviously.
Hmm.
So it's like I actually ended that apprenticeship early and we were just like moving into
Yeah.
the farm and we didn't, we bought it. We were in there August and it was December, right?
That we
Before we bought
officially
it.
bought it. Yeah.
Um,
We had a good situation. But
yeah, it was great. But there was no
yeah,
kitchen. The septic went out like right when it was happening, like right when we were like here. And like graciously, like Alfred, you know, took care of that because the whole time he was
Oh,
like, I don't want to have any showstoppers, He
yeah,
was like he had this whole spreadsheet of things he was trying to fix and he had like a budget and he was like trying to get me to tell him like what to do. And it's like thank God like we didn't do like everything and the septic went out and at that time it's like everyone was doing like projects and stuff. So thankfully we somehow found a guy that did it basically in like a month or two, and got the septic in and
I want to pause and honor Alfred because
yeah.
he's such an important player in your story. I want to transition to what you're doing on the farm, but honor him first because someone like him who holds his position of integrity for, I mean, quite a few years, it sounds like,
yeah,
knowing that he does not want to see this 130 acres of family farmland be
go to
developed,
developer. Yeah.
waited for you, persisted with you, was dedicated to handing over the land in a smooth way. Again, we'll talk now about the farm because I really want people to hear what you're doing there. But wow, Alfred was a
Yeah.
key player whose integrity and focus has allowed so much to happen in your lives and for the land and for all the people who are already benefiting from the farm and will in decades to come.
And his brother too, Charlie, was also very involved in
Mhm.
maintaining this place and in the communications and all this stuff. But Alfred definitely was the first person that I met and the primary communicator. I think because of the proximity. Charlie was in California, so a bit
Okay.
different, but yes,
Yeah.
Alfred, absolutely, we honor him and his aunt Isabel, who
Yes.
stayed here until 2000 and was very much like the preservate like it has to be preserved like this and that and so just a chain of spirit going through the Miller family and then into our family and yes thank you for honoring them because I could talk so much about Alfred too and just like he is a person that I think everyone should know about and look up to. But it's like he would never
Beautiful.
put himself in that position,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
He's a
yeah.
he must be like an angel,
One of our
really.
one of our goals is to try to get the story from his perspective like filmed too, but yeah, Anna's right.
To
Yeah.
keep the history. So tell us what is happening at the farm now, and where do you anticipate your projects and services at the farm developing?
This is actually the perfect time to talk about this one too. I mean, also being 5 years in, we've we've created many different things with the intention of bringing all of our talents and creativity together. So we started with the CSA. We had events here that were um, about connecting with nature, the elementals, with Heart Center. Um, and we've had people stay here long term and short term. And now, 5 years in, I feel like something switched when Sandra invited us to speak at Convergence, where we're like, now is the time to just bring that authenticity forward and talk about how this stewardship journey and this stewardship mission that we're on is so deeply connected to spirit within ourselves, spirit within nature, spirit of all that is. And it was time for that message to be fully brought forward. So we did our whole website update, wrote all of our copy with this presence and with stewardship being the focus. And then we started noticing how all of our services are now also coming together. So we have herbal products, and this is our product from the soil, our interaction with the plant kingdom. And then we started working, like using our infused oils on our bodies, and that brings in our body work aspect. And then we also have the sheep, which this is another connection to soil, how we can bring fashion connected to soil, like the microbiome of the earth, our soil, grows the plants that the sheep eat. The plants collect the light. The sheep are absorbing this light, and then they're giving back to the earth through, the fertility. And through that process, they also gift like the wool, gift babies for more like of this abundance.
I love that you're talking about the sunlight and the sheep too. I had actually never thought about that. I am a lifelong wearer of wool. I just love the vibration and feeling of wool. And I honor the sheep and all the people involved in the production, but I had never thought about how sunlight gets turned into wool. So really
I,
neat how you're commenting on that.
It is.
yeah.
That's some of our wording is like all of this gathering celestial light through soil-based products. It's like the light is collected and converted into so many different things, and we can also co-create in that process, whether it be using the plants or working with animals that use the plants. So it's really, really cool how it's all coming together.
Yeah, that was
Um,
one of the funny things. Like one of the first times we were here, I was like, we were measuring out the fields, like with long 200-foot like measuring tape. And I like made this like ridiculous statement that I believed, but it was like kind of a joke, and I was like, I'm not like a farmer, I'm like more like a wizard, like gathering celestial energy and like commanding the plant kingdom to like mine the minerals of the earth and like synthesize them into, like deliver it to, humanity or something like so theatrical, but it was like it came out so like well, and we were both just like
whoa.
we were just like, hey. But then we went through like the we're not that kind of thing until we were, but we were like really bringing it out piece by piece, like with
Mhm.
the first events we ran, like the first, we're all infused with
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 presence. Yeah.
mindfulness and like meditative stuff. And but it's like, it's kind of dipping your toes into the water and this, and now it's just like soulful authenticity, like
Mhm.
being who you are, and like I don't know. It's just something that I don't think is weird, of like recognizing the energy of like the celestial realm like sustains us. And it might sound weird, to certain people, but it's like I
No,
think
it's so important. I mean, I love to talk about that, how humans really are the connecting point between the heavens and the earth. And you two are living that in a really literal, visceral, physical way.
yeah,
Thank you. Yeah,
yeah.
and we this year too, our calendar will be full again of ways to visit the farm, to experience our products, to experience our services, to experience the land, and we're excited to kind of curate these experiences so that people can feel this connection to heart center, to and how heart center is connected to like the earth and
Yeah, this
all that is the soul of the world, is like we always say. Yeah.
yeah,
I can't wait to come visit.
it's such an interesting, like you're saying, like we're at that focal point, and I don't think people get that, of like you don't have to say anything if you can go out and like, and people come here all the time and they're like, whoa. Like it's so funny. We have
They can
friends that are
feel the
that are not into
vibration.
this at all, and they're like, oh, I always like we have a really good like pizza maker friend who has like a really um
Artisanal.
pop in rest,
Yes.
like he went, but it's like one of those things, he went on this journey with us too. We were
Yeah.
his first event. It was like our first event basically, and now he's like just the man, the pizza, like he's just so good. But he always would come here because we would always do an event every year, because it just like was, I don't know, we just liked it. And he specifically, and other people, but I never forget him, of just like just so casually, like, yeah, it's just like I love coming here. It's just so the energy you can, and I just someone I would never like, expect to hear something like that from. And I think it speaks volume to like this place, and that visceral connection that you're talking about. Is like you can go out and just not do anything, but still be in the presence of the animating force, because there's so much life around. And it's actually probably the best way to experience it, is
Mm.
just to like not do anything and like kind of just be there, like hear the creek and like see the eagle and like all the creatures. And like that's something that we're really big on, is like, can you look at the valley and like the landscape, and can you tell like humans are in it, you know like that's my ultimate goal. And it's like, of course you can hear like but like over time it would be beautiful, uh like a life's work goal of like, can you look at the like valley, and can you not tell? But then when you get like zoom in and get closer, you can see that the creative hand of like humans are working in unison, in concert with what is growing up or wants to grow up. And I think that dialogue over time, and it's like it's a huge goal, because I mean there's so many invasives and there's so many of this stuff and existing buildings and whatever. But and it's like that's part of the sustainability thing too, is like, why would I tear down a barn that's been there for 200 years, like, and it's got the last chestnuts, like all in it. Like it's an unbelievable, like also piece
History.
of like humanity. And but that's kind of been my vision and goal. And I think Anne's too, is like, how do you let the forest go back, but also have these pockets of grazing um, and cultivation that are so interwoven and like define, like defined, by how nature really does it with, like mushrooms kind of like rot the trees and make them fall down and die. And then all of a sudden there's like grass available to grow and then animals move in and out of it. It's like that's like nature in a forest environment. And how can we like recreate that with, our help?
How
Um,
you can be participating in that
yeah,
cycle.
instead of like,
Yes.
we're just gonna clear a square. Like, and I mean, people come here and we like don't mow like a whole field
We
at a
think
time.
pets,
But that's
Mhm.
why it's beautiful
yeah,
because we have this like, to me, everyone's like, you gotta mow, like, why aren't you mowing? And I'm like, I do mow. It's just very strategic and like at certain times and at certain, points of the year so that everything has a chance to reproduce and have bait, and like, but like we, to the point of like the paths, it's like people like don't understand how beautiful like a diverse Pennsylvania field meadow can
hmm
be. And we have these just like lazy path of like just one, two mower widths around, but they're like not straight and like they kind of wind and like go through, and people love like walking around it because you're like kind of like
surrounded.
in
Yeah.
a space that's not yours, it's
Right. And
like,
you're providing access to this historic, sacred, preserved land.
and we have this other side too. There's just so much to do here if we had like all the support in the world. Like we this like unbelievable like forest back here, an unbelievable forest. There's like five different stands, but it's like we would really love to be able to like, we kind of have these trails now defined and like, but it's like you got to be able to like keep up with
Maintain.
all of this.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a huge thing. And so maybe
Maybe
one day,
goats someday. Goat employees.
well, the sheep do a great job. They're like
I
forest
bet.
creatures, forest grassland
I
creatures.
bet.
And but yeah, like being able to bring, somehow figure out how to bring people in and be able to like go from, see all these different diverse like areas and like how they work together, and it's like all on the same property, and just like what, like make a path almost of like a meditative path to like see the whole thing, and like the
Yes.
differences between the old growth forest and the invasive growth, and like how we maintain it and how the sheep interact, it's like it's gonna be
Really
so
beautiful.
cool, but
Yeah.
So
it's such a
much to
big
share.
project. Yeah.
Yeah. We are going to have a part two of this conversation in a year or two and find
Yes.
out where the farm is then.
We love
Anne and David, thank you so much for being in conversation with me. I am in awe of the clear guiding forces that brought the two of you together and brought you to this land now with your family and your sheep and your dogs, the trees, the buildings, the river.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. It was a gift to have you with us today on the Alight podcast.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much for
Shar. Thank
inviting
you.
us. Yes.